regard to some of the other groups in the city. So that's something I think we need to put on an agenda at some point in the near future.
Okay.
Near.
This month.
This month near.
Okay.
No, whoa, wait a minute, that's
Whoa.
not near.
It's okay. Anything else? What about any of the other committees? I know, Dave, we met this afternoon, 4:30 downstairs with the kids. I mean, all of us were involved, but
Well,
just,
everybody was here, but yeah, all the kids from the youth council have been assigned a
mentor.
what?
Mentor?
Well, a mentor, one of the city council and the treasurer. And that study, that's the idea of the youth council, is to learn about council and how the city works, like that. So you may start to see a few kids sitting in here listening on me, and so and they may even be asking some of the department heads for some information, but they'll tell you who they are and stuff.
They'll identify themselves as youth council.
But anyway, so that's kind of the idea, is to give them a mentor each quarter, and then they'll switch. And so they kind of get a feel for different people and how things work. And so.
Like I said, I appreciate you guys, I don't know if it's a last minute response, but a good turnout, and I know the kids are excited to do this. And to me, that's really what that youth council is about, is really getting that exposure to what our goals are and what we do. So, okay, anybody else?
The RAMP Commission, the grant applications were finalized on the 3rd. That's closed. And now they're going through those. I don't know how many applications were received, but they're going through those and they'll let us know here soon. That moves forward. So.
It's always a good process to go through, and it'll be interesting to see some of the kids assigned to you to let them sit in on that process.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, if there's not anything else, then let's go ahead and get going with our presentation. And our first up is going to be Davis and Weaver Canal Company and Mr. Rick Smith. I believe you've got the honors here to enlighten us on what's going on with water and what's happening with the canal company.
Do you have a presentation? Yeah, just click on what?
Click on that bottom.
Hour?
Yeah, that was there. And you can start the slideshow.
Okay, there we go. Hello, Rick Smith. I'm the general manager of Davis Weaver Canal. This is Fred Philpott with Lewis, Young, Robertson, and Birmingham. So the two companies with the longest names, I think, combined forces. So we're here tonight just kind of go over our system a little bit. I'm going to give a little background kind of also on the water status. But then the main reason why we're here is our secondary water rates need to increase. So just want to keep you informed so you know what's going on. So I'll just do the background, and then Fred will take care of the financial side of things, since that is his expertise. As you all know, the last 3 years have been severe droughts, if not extreme or exceptional droughts. Current reservoirs and snowpack are looking good, but again, it can't stop. We need to continue the storms and the additional snow and rainfall. So right now, this is roughly about 170% of normal, but that again is roughly about 65%, 67% of our normal peak, which is in March and April. So we need to continue to get more storms, but right now, Echo's 62% full and East Canyon 56%. So we're sitting better than we were in previous years, so it's encouraging. So many years ago, about almost 7 years ago, we did a facility plan, and we've been doing some improvements. This last year, we had the new pump station in Kaysville operational, which impacts that southwest part of Layton City, since it goes through the Kaysville system to get that water. So we continue to do improvements. As you can see, in the next few years, we have a few capital improvement projects. Then long term, again, someday we'll need to actually replace the existing system, and so further out, excuse me, we have further capital projects that we need to consider between now and 2050. So, as you all know, I know you're involved with that. Metering is a hot topic under secondary water, and so Davis Weber actually has 3,900 meters. We had 2 Bureau of Reclamation grants as well as just new development have installed meters since 2013. So roughly 10 years we've been putting meters in. And then again, that last quote, if more citizens in Utah knew how much water they were using, they would voluntarily conserve it. So I think we've seen that over the last few years. People actually have conserved, but this will be a metric using the meters. And as you know, and I saw in your agenda later on, you're approving your secondary meter installation contract. So House Bill 242 is requiring us all to do that in a very quick manner by the end of 2029. And so we have been receiving some of the ARPA grant funds from the state, as well as loans or funding from the state. We're continuing to do that. And it is quite a challenge when we have roughly 13,000 that we needed to install for our system. So upwards of $39–40 million in the next 7 years. So that can be a challenge. Again, Davis Weber rates, we continue to invest in our system, and we're trying to meet with state code and get everything metered. And then our rates haven't changed since 2011. So we're close to 12 years since we've changed our rates. So it's definitely time, and we've been analyzing that over the last few years as I've become manager. So recently we hired Lewis, Young, Robertson, and Birmingham to do a rate study, which has been able to help us analyze kind of our revenues and expenditures, to look at operation management, capital improvement, secondary metering, and then the future repair and replacement. So there's kind of those big 4 components of our fee schedule to meet those current and future demands of our finances. And then again, we've used several loans over the years, one to build the system, and some of those loans we're still paying. They were 35-year loans. We've been in operation roughly 30 years for secondary water. So we're nearing completion on some of those loans, but then we're also taking on more loans with these secondary metering requirements that have come about. I think this is now Fred's fun part, the finances.
Alrighty. Thank you for having me this evening, both of us, and it's been a pleasure to work with Rick. I'll say this is one of the more complex models that I've worked with all of the different entities that the canal company works with, and the different variables that have gone into this analysis. So at a high level, these are the typical policies and objectives that we focus on for a rate study. We look at revenue sufficiency, we look at cash reserves, that's the cash you have at the end of each fiscal year, and how does that track from each year as you move forward. And then we look at debt service coverage ratios, ensuring that there is appropriate net revenues after you've paid your operating expenditures. We also look at ease of implementation, so ensuring that the rate structure that's adopted, or if there's any modifications to the rate structure, that they don't create an administrative burden or an unnecessary administrative burden. Sometimes that's unavoidable, but we do look at ease of implementation and ensuring equity. We also recommend that rates be reviewed every 2 to 5 years. So we've prepared a rate model that looks beyond the 5-year planning horizon, and there are proposed increases in future years, but those should be reevaluated because costs will change. We're all aware that we're in a unique environment as it relates to inflation, construction costs, the changing economy. All of those variables should be evaluated and reevaluated in future rate studies. These are the high-level objectives that we considered in this analysis as well, focusing on revenue sufficiency, cash reserves, and debt coverage. So here's the baseline scenario if we do nothing. In essence, what is happening in the canal company's pro forma is the projected capital projects as well as the debt expense as we layer on future state loans to fund the metering program and some of the capital projects. There's not sufficient revenue to maintain this pro forma. We typically do a baseline to say, hey, if we do nothing with regards to rate, what happens? And that allows us to identify appropriate action, whether that's immediate or delayed action. In this case, we're looking at a fairly quick dive, and so all our scenarios, we focused on, as a result of this dilemma, taking immediate action and remedying this. You can see there is debt coverage, but that also declines as we look forward in the pro forma. As we layer on, again, new operational expense, inflationary pressure, and those types of things. I'll also point out in this analysis, this kind of gets into the weeds, and when you look at the spreadsheet, there's quite a bit of data that goes into this. But as part of this analysis, we looked at each of the service areas that are served by Davis and Weber County Canal Company, and we looked at cost allocation with regards to the different components of the operations and maintenance expenditures. And from that analysis, we evaluated specific cost components on a per acre foot basis, on a per connection basis, to evaluate the different impacts for each of the service areas to ensure that the model that we produced and the proposed rates were equitable. And that's really a key component in a rate study, is evaluating equity, especially when you look at multiple service areas, to ensure that costs are being allocated appropriately. And so we were able to go through that with staff's assistance to allocate costs to the different service areas, and then compare that within the service area as a whole. That influenced the proposed rate schedules that are provided and that we'll present to each of the different municipalities, and influences your schedule that we'll show in a couple slides. So from the baseline analysis, when we identify the problem, we identify solutions, and we spent several months going through different scenarios, evaluating costs and the assumptions included in the model. And we produced this scenario, which is a proposed rate increase, which again I'll show you on the next couple of slides with regards to Layton City schedule. But here we're assuming a revenue increase to promote sustainability. There are a couple of UDOT projects that are being proposed that benefit specific service areas, but those projects are actually spread across the whole system. The reason for that is because historically capital costs of this nature have also been spread and shared across the system. And so to maintain that equity that was experienced in the past, we've maintained that strategy as we've looked at some of these UDOT projects. O&M costs, again, are allocated based on an estimated cost per acre foot as we looked at the different variables for each of the service areas. Again, this was scenario 2, or the needed rates to promote the projected days of cash on hand. So you can see it drops as we layer in capital projects as well as debt. But that rebounds in the second half of this pro forma. So we can see it start to build back up. Again, when we look at a rate study, we focus on a 5-year planning horizon. It's difficult to predict what's going to happen beyond even next year. And so the recommendation is that as we move forward, the company will look at and continue to evaluate this pro forma and reevaluate potential future increases. So again, the model proposes future increases, but based on changes in some of the assumptions, those could be adjusted as we move forward. In addition, our debt coverage remains above our target amount. I will also point out that what's happening is, as Rick mentioned, there are existing pieces of debt that the company is paying off right now. As those tail off, the future state loans start to layer on. So you're in essence replacing that debt as you move forward in the pro forma. Alrighty, so with regards to proposed rates, here's the schedule for each of the lot sizes and the meter sizes. So you can see the lot size on the left and then the meter size on top. with the proposed rates. So a third acre and less is at the $313, and then it goes up from there based on overall estimated water utilization by lot size. We also thought it'd be beneficial to show that as a percentage. So here's the percentage increase. So you can see it's maxes out at a 25% increase, and then as you get into some of the larger meters, the percentage is actually a little bit lower, dropping down to 13% increase. And the reason why there's that fluctuating percentage increase is as we evaluated the cost components and looked at allocating costs based on utilization, that shifted some of the analysis. So in previous schedules, the smaller meters were not governed as much by utilization, and now we are putting a little bit more focus on utilization of water, and that's causing these percentages to fluctuate. So you're not seeing a straight 25%, for example, across the board in those increases. So this would represent the recommended schedule, the percentage increase. Again, what this is designed to do is to ensure that we have revenue sufficiency within the pro forma so that we can fund really the substantial capital investment that is required to meter the system and then over time start to look at replacement of that system. So one of the concessions, so to speak, with regards to this pro forma to ensure that we could get to even this level was the capital plan recommended a certain amount of repair and replacement capital investment. We looked at paring that back so that we could complete the meter projects and the meter program and get that funded, and then we layered in that repair and replacement farther on in that capital plan. So you saw that chart that Rick presented in some previous slides where it showed the capital investment was lower up front and then it spiked at the tail end. We've in essence pushed some of that out so that we could, while this doesn't look gradual, a 25% increase is a larger increase. In order to get that, again, we pushed some of that capital investment out so that we could focus on the meter replacement and the UDOT projects and the immediate capital investment needs. So this represents the proposed schedule. From here, basically rates need to be adjusted as soon as possible because of that capital investment need. And then we're just looking for next steps. I don't know if Rick, if you wanted to add anything else to that.
Yeah, so in Layton City, Davis Weaver does the billing for our 1,200 connections, and so we will implement that basically end of February is when we send those invoices out. So we wanted to inform you and let you know that we were doing that and the need for that, because we do have an agreement with the city, and the fee schedule was part of that. So I wasn't sure if you need to update that agreement or just be acknowledged and know about it versus having to update that agreement. So
I have a couple of questions.
Okay,
So knowing that this is your proposed rate increase, and I get the fact that this is primarily driven by the metering that's mandated by the state.
A large part of it, yeah.
Right. Did you are these adjusted equally with each city, or every city is done differently? So in other words, if our maximum is 25%, let's say somebody that's a full-on user out west, how big of an increase are they looking at?
So right now, we have 5 different cities we serve, and so that 25% is our max. That was a decision by the board, not to go beyond that 25%. We could have, some places like 27, 28%. So we said, all right, everyone's going to get up to maximum 25%. We'll reevaluate it in a year or two and then decide if we need to adjust again. So we are doing equitably.
So based upon the coverage, because like I said,
so we're meeting with
you're in a very small portion of our city that's actually impacted by this, but
right.
It is an impact.
Yes.
Secondly,
we are meeting with all 5 cities in the next 2 weeks. So
okay.
Fred and I are going to hang out a lot this next couple of weeks.
Everybody. So I know that you're doing it based upon size as well, whether 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch. And this is probably more of a Steve Jackson. What's the average size then that's our service area?
Almost everything in Layton that we serve is a 1 inch, except for either a church or a large detention basin or some of those. But for the most part, if it's an acre or less, it's 1 inch. Okay. Unless again someone's again, a church sometimes have been on 2-inch, but for the most part, they're 1-inch.
All right.
And that's the same in our service area, the majority are 1-inch meters, except for those kind of outliers that are a little
Yeah.
bit bigger.
But there are systems where we serve churches and schools, like with the larger recreation areas with 2, 3, 4, and I think a 6 is our largest one with the school, which is a lot of water. And a very expensive meter when it gets down to actually installing those. So that's the other part of that equation is we're gonna have to meter all those as well in the next 7 years, those large ones,
As well as the
Especially-
ones that are.
which costs probably 10 times sometimes the single 1-inch connection.
Are those rates, is that like a monthly rate?
So that's an annual rate, that 313 is an annual.
Yeah. That'd be tough if it
Yes.
was, if it was monthly.
Annual,
It would be.
Yes,
It's an annual rate, yeah.
does that mean once a year?
Yeah, so we send an invoice out in February and they need to be paid by April.
Just a question, have you reached out to the residents yet then with this?
No, we're informing all the different city councils and cities and then we'll send it out with
Send
it.
your letter out saying here's the,
Here's the new.
And how many connections are in Layton?
Roughly 1,200.
1,200?
So that southern section, basically south of Layton Parkway, and then that western, like Gordon Avenue, 2200 West area.
Do you want to see?
So we're north of you.
Okay, stay there.
And do you usually notify people, I mean, you haven't changed this since 2011, but is 2 months generally the lead time that you give before they need to make that payment? Is that normal, or do they normally get longer?
I don't know on 2011 what they did in timelines. I've been there just under 7 years, so I don't know if they actually gave much notice besides just send out the. Again, it wasn't 25% either. So
For entities I've worked with, it'll depend on the policy that is adopted. So some entities will adopt based on a fiscal year cycle. Even if we've conducted a rate study in January, they may delay that until the next fiscal year and present it as part of the budget process. Whereas other entities will make it effective immediately and it starts to go on your bill. So it kind of depends on need and urgency relative to the pro forma.
When you say on your bill, so this isn't like, okay, you owe us $313, but it may, is this over time? Like,
it's a single payment. Some
Yeah.
people
It's a single-
some people opt to sign something and say, okay, we'll do 2 or 3 payments, but
you
for the most
can't,
part, it's a
they
single
can't do
payment.
that though.
Yeah, we have worked with people, but typically it's a once a year, one payment.
Just, yeah, okay.
How much of the cost to do the secondary metering is being covered by the grant funding from the state?
So right now we've got the 10 million, the first 10 million. So roughly our 13,000, that's roughly 40 million. So right now it's only a quarter. We've already applied our second application for additional funding. So we're still waiting to hear about that one. I think everyone threw their hat in the ring on that one.
They did.
So they had 50 million, I think it was. And probably, who knows? 2 of us probably could use the 50 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's very challenging.
Because my understanding was there was still money left, right?
Right.
So you guys need
So
a lot more and there's some left.
And those discussions are happening again with the entities that I'm working with. Everyone is trying to
yeah.
get whatever pieces are left, and if there's more money, then there's more need. And so that was one of our challenges was dealing with some of the uncertainty associated with these unknown funding sources. Again, that would be a trigger point on future rate revisions. So our model looks at potential increases in the future, and if additional funding is received, then those future increases could potentially go away, which is the benefit. If they're not, then the company will have to look at revenue sufficiency as we move forward. I will point out that the model does consider, in addition to the grant monies, we assume that there are the state loans that would be available at a
For the 1%?
yes, at a lower rate, and so that does provide a benefit in the model, whereas not all entities get that opportunity to use that
And
funding.
we were one of the first ones. Our number's number 3 out of the 200 that they funded. So we're number 3, and we were the first ones actually to get not only authorized but also committal funds in that first meeting in August. So we have definitely been pushing it.
I appreciate that because, I mean, I would say a substantial part of our costs for secondary metering is covered almost exclusively by the grant and the 1%. So when you guys were saying, oh, we got to do this because of secondary metering costs, that's why I asked those questions. 'Cause
Right.
we can't say that if we were to raise our rates because there really was, the cost was negligible in the total value of the actual project. But it sounds like you guys are in a different situation, even though you're the water.
And we were actually proactively, we
Yeah, it
had
doesn't make any
3,900
sense.
before this was a mandate. So yeah, so we had about 11%, I think it is, of our systems already metered, but that 90% is going to be a lot in a 7-year time period. So yeah, we're actually doing it.
I'm sure this is just the beginning of any other entities as well.
And the state
Probably
legislators
bringing in
do.
the same news.
And we were very involved in the state legislation back in January and February, as Clint and others saw me there a few times, trying to help them understand, yes, you could tell me that 10 million, but that's only a small percentage of our need.
Right.
So I was trying to increase that percentage.
So let me ask another question, maybe not associated with this. So, and maybe we buy water from Davis, no? We don't buy any?
You're a shareholder of our company.
Yeah, we have water shares, some water shares, but they provide service in a certain section of Layton.
Yeah, no, but we buy water from,
Well, we own shares.
we own, okay, I take it back.
We have to pay our
Assessments.
Yeah, assessments, yeah,
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
developer develops and they have D&W shares they want to contribute to the
Right.
city so they can develop. And
Right.
That's how we accumulate
Oh,
shares.
okay.
We don't buy water for culinary use like we do from Weaver Basin, Dave.
Oh, I'm thinking
Off
Weaver
of-
Basin, I'm
off
sorry.
of,
Yeah, this is Davis Weaver,
Yeah.
that's right.
Try to figure out how to take out the Weaver so no one
Yeah,
can
I
see
know.
you.
Every time
We
I-
had that same conversation this morning.
Every time I see you, I'm thinking Weaver, that's first thing, and so.
The irony is they are our largest shareholder, so they also
Well,
receive water from us, which
right.
is ironic.
Okay, no, it meant, then I was gonna ask, I won't worry about it.
So I have a question. I think if I understood you correctly, when you looked at allocating the O&M costs, you were allocating those based on service area. Is
Yes.
that correct? What were some of the, not in detail, but what were some of the metrics that you were using to allocate those costs? Was it population, number of connections, volume of water?
Yes, we looked at connections and acre feet of
Those were
water
consumed
utilization.
in that
Yes.
service area?
Yep.
And
then-
our historical O&M costs per
Yes.
city.
And the direct costs that we could attribute to specific areas based on like pumping costs or, so staff provided a direct allocation of costs that we then looked at allocating either by connection or by acre foot to determine proportionality. So that exercise was to determine, do we need to split things up further than what they are now, or can we keep rates more uniform? Originally, we were moving towards a direction of having a single rate schedule for the company as a whole. Say, hey, this is what it's going to look like.
It's very close.
And it's closer, yeah, it's getting close to that because of the costs are coming out to be that way, but there was still some nuances that we couldn't split up, so.
So like our general secondary operation and maintenance is divvied up per number of connections. So Layton only pays 1,200 connections of our 16+ thousand.
Yeah.
So that's the general stuff, but then there's still specific items per Layton City.
Yeah.
But again, overall, we're trying to make sure all the revenues match all of our needs.
So was there, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Was there much, I wasn't quite sure the way you framed it, but was there, is there much variation from
Sure, yeah.
service area to service area when you consider all those different
I
components?
was actually surprised that when it filtered out based on per connection and the total use, it was actually
Yes,
closer than I thought it
it
would be.
was very close,
That's
yeah,
good.
so.
The system I thought may have had more O&M, he said based on number of connections, yeah, they got more connections but more O&M, but per connection it kind of
Yeah.
balanced out.
On a per connection basis, they were almost equivalent.
And most connections are under that 0.33 and smaller. Half acre and less is the majority.
I wonder if it'd be, to ask if it's not, if there's any concern about it, but if you guys could provide the staff at least with some of that data, then what, I think that'll help us when our residents, they'll probably start calling the city first, and then we're able to explain, or if they talk to you and they don't agree, then they can call us, we can explain and say that this is why they've this is, we're aware of it, these are the factors we can speak to it intelligently
Yeah.
to support the need for it, does that make sense?
Yeah.
As opposed to saying, we're not sure why, and then have them say, well, why not, kind of thing, so.
Would it help to summarize, or kind of gives, here's the 5 bullet points of what kind of got,
Yeah, I think anything
out of
you
that.
can share with us, and
okay,
I think that most people will be concerned about rates.
right, yeah,
They-
we all know
If we can
that.
explain what the rate consists of, and it's equitable across, and the per connection is the same, and
Yeah.
I think that helps people say, okay, there's a fairness
Yeah.
there.
And again, we haven't changed rates since 2011, which is either good or bad, depends on how you look at that, right? But the other side of it is there's a lot of outside influences from the state of Utah, either UDOT project and or the new legislation that's pushing us over that edge. So, okay, we have to do this, otherwise we're not gonna meet the demands in the short term.
Can we get it, and maybe we have it, the map of where they are?
Service area?
Oh, so.
Yeah, and actually, on Layton City's website, you actually have a map per secondary
For
water
that.
providers. No, all 3 providers are.
Okay, I'll look there. It's okay, I just wanna be able to know where
Yeah.
I'm gonna be hearing from people.
And yeah, we can provide that link or,
No, that's
like I said,
fine.
it's on
I
the
will, I
webpage.
can look it up, it's no big deal.
So looking forward, I'll just ask one thing, that knowing what we've had to deal with in the past with the water conservation and the nuances and you guys did one thing, we were basing it on something else. I'm just gonna say, hopefully this year going forward, we all learn from that. Perhaps you can get together in advance and hopefully come up with a mutual schedule or
Just keep snowing.
It's-
whatever we're gonna
yeah.
do, kind of make it so that the city doesn't have to jump in and kind of say, okay, here. Because I think that would be good for
Yeah.
everybody, all residents included, and and that's something that quite honestly should have been done, but we all learned from it.
And it's a challenge,
I know,
just even regionally, let alone statewide,
Yeah.
because of water rates. Yeah.
and I know that
So
that's
we
a
get
challenge.
100% of our water before we basically gets anything new. So that's where it's kind of ironic that we can, in theory, we could serve more. We actually probably did more restriction than we needed to, but we wanted to stay more consistent with the region, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
And
I
again, that's their-
understand that,
yeah.
and that's why I'm kind of, and I don't mind asking the same of them, but I
Yeah.
think that would definitely help with any type of conservation efforts going forward before the metering's out there, because, we're receiving a lot of snowfall and moisture right now, but when you're only saying that, hey, that only puts us at 63%, we're looking at that again this coming year, so.
Yeah, we're hoping again, January, February are the key months. If you look at last year, it just flatlined, January, February, even into March. And
Right.
so, as long as we don't repeat that, we'll be okay.
I hope so.
Sorry.
I do want to point out one more thing. With regards to the metering program, as that is implemented and the company is able to collect data, that will also be a triggering factor that will influence future rate studies. So with better data with regards to utilization of company resources, it will likely result in a redistribution, or it may result in a redistribution of within the rate schedule as that data is we key into that information more readily and easily from the metering information. So right now, where we can't meter customers, it's a more generalized schedule. That's going to be more fine-tuned as we get better data.
And I saw on your agenda legislative items or priorities.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure, just seeing the writing on the wall, the state's probably going to mandate in 7 or 8 years that we have to start billing based on that meter.
Yeah.
Again, that's not in our purview, but my assumption is that's where it's going.
That'll be an interesting
Yes, it will be.
dynamics too, because it depends on the type of meter you have and what type of data you can collect out of it, and knowing that there's the ones with the probes and those without the probes, and what type of.
Yeah,
how
go
that's
back to
gonna-
end
That's
user.
gonna really mess up that data.
Yeah.
Okay,
But again, that's long term, that's where I see things going, even though again, that's outside of our purview, and we've always said, right, it's education, we're trying to help people learn what they're using and conserve, but I already know that's coming.
well, thanks for the heads up.
Okay.
Anything else, you guys?
Okay, thank you for your
Well,
time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Davis Weaver.
The other guys, just say that.
Just call
I
him
just
Davis
hate
and the
using
other
that
one
first
Weaver.
name.
You go.
Well, that was a good lead-in for Gary there on bringing up our legislative priorities for Tuesday. You wanna-
Sure. I've got a tentative agenda for you, and I'm just gonna hand it out.
Okay.
Have you take a look at it. If there's anything that you think we need to add to it, let us know, but, we've got our usual list of suspects, land use, water, affordable housing,
And they won't be on
those
there.
types of things. And so, excuse the date, it's really the 10th. It'll be the morning of the 10th, not the 9th, and I apologize, I didn't get that corrected. I came in here, but, we have a number of questions that we want to ask leadership when they come in, and we have all the leadership coming into our meeting, which is kind of interesting. There's not another city, I don't think, that has this opportunity or that takes this opportunity to actually address with the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House these issues. So, talked to the mayor today about some of the items that of interest. We certainly want to express our appreciation for the things that they've done. You just mentioned one of them, which is the water metering. And boy, that's a big advantage to us to be able to obtain a majority of that large of funding, especially when there were over 400 million in requests and 270 million. Extra zero, yeah. Well, zeros, but
I'm
anyway.
surprised, just the numbers, just that they would only have a fourth of the coverage.
Yeah.
That's just crazy to me.
Yeah.
Because it was financially negligible for us.
Yeah.
But they're like a canal company, right? It's just bizarre to me that they wouldn't be reading out and like taking the bulk of the fund and having us, it would seem it would be the opposite. Like we would be having to come up with the funds, but I'm not complaining, I'm just saying.
Well, I think our engineering's done a really good job too of bidding that out and bringing it to a point where 70% does cover 70% of our expenses.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a kudos to them. So we're grateful for that. We've got issues regarding the Great Salt Lake, and the metering's a big part of that solution. Also, the $40 million that they've applied to try and acquire shares and that type of thing. It would be great to have an update from Brad, particularly who's taken an interest in this, on his feelings as to where we're going this year with water law, with a lot of the water mandates. I have heard that there are a number of restrictive water statutes that they're looking at trying to pass, particularly when it comes to landscaping.
Do you send this to them before?
No, this is only to you so far, just to be able to get. But I will send it to them before
Just so they
Tuesday.
know.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So yeah, thanks. I
Yeah.
understand the question. I want to make sure we get what you.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Just once we have just so they don't come and give us
Blindsided.
some time of to prepare.
I don't.
Even if it's just a few minutes.
I always blindside them. They expect that. Come on.
We want a good answer.
I got a couple that are really good, but anyway.
You just mentioned landscaping, sorry.
So yeah, landscaping's a big. There's about. I was told there were 3 to 4 bills on limiting, even subtracting from green landscaping this year. So I don't know what they're going to do, but with the intent of getting more water to the Great Salt Lake. We want to know if you have questions that you want to raise that you may think of outside of what's on the agenda. We want to make sure you have an opportunity to do that. We also want the opportunity for them to be able to raise whatever issues they have. Down below are really the meat of the meeting. There's a lot of talk on taxes, on particularly property tax, on putting a cap on property tax, which directly affects us. Gas tax, they're looking at some changes in the gas tax that I think are significant to us. The hope is that it would not adversely affect what we're currently collecting, because we depend on that for our roads. But there's a couple of bills that specifically deal with the gas tax, and then the 1/5 of a fifth is a tax that has already been passed by the legislature and should have been adopted by the county. I think it has. But what they're going to do is they're going to propose that it be split between the city and the county, and that the city be able to use it as much as the county can for transportation needs. And we want to promote that. It's not an additional tax, it's a tax that has already been passed and approved, and but it will provide some money for transportation. And so they're looking at making a change in that. I think Representative Schultz is looking at making that change. Water, I've just indicated the water laws. This is the one that probably will be interesting, and that is, I've heard from the governor, I've heard from the Speaker of the House, not the President of the Senate yet, but they use the word transformative changes. And both the governor and the speaker, and also Fillmore, Senator Fillmore, if you were at the conference that we had, we're going to make transformative changes when it comes to planning and zoning, and specifically focused on housing. Yeah. And yet, for the entire interim, we have been working very hard with the Property Rights Coalition, which we do every single year, to try and come to solutions to problems that they see in building, in developing, in the process involved. But they will not let us know what these transformative changes are. In other words, they're I don't know what they are. And so what I would like to do is just ask leadership what those transformative changes might be, because I think it's significant 2 weeks before the session to know, what are you looking at? Are you looking at, it's interesting because we've held these meetings all over the state, these small, I won't call them charrettes, but meetings, Pace University type meetings. And the one thing that most of our elected officials have indicated is that their concern is that a lot of the mandates that have been imposed on local government and a lot of the preemption that has been imposed on local government has not yielded any of the changes that they think, that it's going to yield. And so I think if we are going to accept mandates and the preemption, that it at least needs to work towards the goal that we have put into place of providing more affordable homes and to provide affordability in homes as well. Those two are two different things. And so I think it's good to let them know that that's a concern of ours, is that over the last 3-4 years, you remember the design criteria that they took away, the time periods that they set for building inspection, all these other things. While, they provided some benefit somewhere along the line, I don't think they provided what they think they provided, that is affordability in homes, any more affordability in homes.
What do you think that transformative change is? Getting rid of single-family zoning?
My guess is that's probably
That's a nuclear option.
It would be a state mandated density for certain zones. No more single-family zones.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That would be my guess. I may be totally wrong.
I've heard it.
So
Grapevine too.
last year, our meeting we had last year, Jerry Stevenson, former mayor of Layton City, he said something. He's like, I'm probably gonna get in trouble if I say this, but there's not much we can do. It's a market situation. And what's changed? As far as legislatively, what's changed?
Well, by reducing
What is that?
Yeah, I remember him saying that.
how do you get affordability? How do you force affordability?
Yeah.
How do you force, for example, if we do go faster and put out subdivisions faster and reduce impact fees and all these other things, how do you force the developer who's got a market price of X to reduce that market price of X? You know, I mean, no matter how much we reduce it, when the market was hot, they were getting whatever they could. And whatever the difference was, whatever the affordability element was, it went into their pocket, essentially. Now, it's interesting because we got an artificial slowdown. And so do you think with an artificial slowdown that the builders are continuing to build and charging less for their homes? what has happened is they've stopped building
They're
homes.
playing the supply chain game.
They've stopped building. We've got, Chad can give us an idea. We got hundreds of lots that are not being developed. And what are they waiting for? They're waiting for the market to go up so that the amount they pay for the property will be worthwhile and they'll still make the same types of profits that they made in the past. But that's what happens, when you start to get an influx of units and the building starts to slow down because they're not making as much on those units. And it doesn't work the opposite direction. That is, it doesn't provide a lower price for those now because there's so many on the market. That's not the way that it happens.
Clinton and I were talking about this earlier today. He was reading the House majority put up their policy goals. And one of the things that they said was the three-pronged challenge of rising interest rates, price inflation for building materials and labor, and overburdensome local housing regulation has resulted in housing supply shortage. And their way to fix it is to reduce regulatory barriers at the local level that limit housing supply. It does not mention any specific overburdensome regulation. It's just a conclusion statement. So
It's
I'm
just
not
a
really-
blanket phrase.
yeah, I don't know. There's no meat to that at all, except that they feel like the cities haven't somehow lifted our end.
Transformative change.
Yeah, so I mean,
That's what they're gonna do.
transformative change, you would need to be able to provide where the beef was, right? Not just a,
Well, if you recall last time, the argument is that when the developer comes in and they go through the process within each city was taking too long, and that's where they were losing all their funding because, it took too long to kind of get the end result going. So that I would anticipate the timing issue probably implemented and mandated on us as well.
They're working on that right now. So
Yeah.
that's correct. And may I just say that we're not without sin. The cities are, I've got cities out there that I wish I could shoot. But, just because we get calls on what they're doing, deliberately violating state law.
Yeah.
And I think they're gonna tell you that, when we actually meet, that has to be solved somehow. And we realize that. I've got cities that, when a developer pulls that ripcord provision, I've said, we don't care. We're not gonna hear your application anyway. So you've got that side of it going too, but the problem is they take a broad brush.
Yeah, they think all of us are that way when that's not the case.
No, it sweeps the good in with the bad.
So they don't apologize for the bluntness, but they know that's the reality, that they're not gonna let an opportunity to exploit the situation go unexploited, and that's the reality. And I think they use, the citizens are completely ignorant of this, not because of their lack of understanding, but because of the way that the narrative, this is a marketing strategy is what it is, just use that kind of language. And people, I think, naively believe, because they don't know otherwise, like we do, because we're in the middle of this, that these efforts will actually produce housing affordability, and it's a lie, it's a sham, is what it is. So one of the things I'm not speaking plainly, but one of the things Gary and I've talked about, he just patiently listens when I rant about it, is at what point, when these kinds of just crazy and very detrimental efforts to the public, when is the city's collectively going to stand up against that and at least inform the public about this is what this really means? You're talking, if they're talking about getting rid of single-family zoning, I mean, that is a monumental thing. How many people would support the only thing you can build in a community is apartments or multifamily housing? That issue will not prevail in the court of public opinion at all. When you find out that the impact fees and such charged for cities to build infrastructure to provide for residents is 10 or 12% of the total cost of the home, and yet they're inferring that that's the reason for the problem. Yeah, it's not true. It's not true, but that's a narrative that, if it's packaged properly, seems to resonate with people. But in my opinion, nobody's telling the other side of the story. And the people that know are the cities. And yet it's appropriate, we go along to get along sometimes collectively.
Right.
And so they can continue to do it. In these committees and so forth, these homebuilder reps can push these very extreme positions, and nobody dares push back against them. And so it just keeps going. I'm not saying this is the time, but at some point, they'll take over zoning in the state, and local citizens, through their elected officials and themselves, will not have any ability to make a decision about this is where I want to live or how I want to live. Somebody in the state legislature will have said, you're going to live in an apartment, you're not going to have grass, you're not going to have this, you're not going to have that. I mean, and it's all mostly about money.
What's frustrating from our side of the table is that we get pushback from people who think that we're on the side of the development.
Exactly.
In the pockets.
As if we're in the pocket of the developers, when it's really we're trying to keep the citizens having the ability to be able to have a neighborhood that's a single family zone. That's what we're trying to do. And
Well, a choice.
we want to get
Or at least
the
a
choice.
choice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so
the
if
big
they
thing
want
that's
to do that,
taken
they
away.
can. And so it just feels like you have the state, I think that it's gonna come to a point, and maybe that's a transformative change that they are envisioning, that they can't use the scalpel anymore, that they've gotta use the hammer. I think that they're gonna realize that when they do that, it's not gonna have the effect, and then who are they gonna blame at that point? Because, like you mentioned, Alex, I mean, a lot of the costs, they make them sound like these are, who doesn't want to get rid of overburdensome government regulation? It's like you're in the state of Utah, everyone wants to do that. So obviously that's a winner politically, but what they don't say is that, well, so some of that overburdensome regulations to make sure that the houses don't fall off the mountain, and that we build functioning infrastructure around it. It's not exactly a negligible, it's not discretionary funding at that point. And I don't understand how they can kind of blame the cities as a whole for what is like you mentioned, Gary, a market disruption. They can't blame us for that. And it's I want to have that conversation with them, and it's good that we have who we have here to have that discussion. Because
Just quickly get to that on the agenda.
yeah.
Because they don't have a lot of time.
This was the area that I thought I'd be able to speed up on our agenda, to make sure we have time for later, but that's okay.
If you do have changes, let me know.
The one thing I did want to make sure that we talk about during this is the judicial stuff.
Let's talk about that today. JR?
Yeah, criminal justice reform, whatever the word is, that we don't have that situation happen in here, and maybe we can tell them about that situation and what happened and how this person should not have been on the streets again and again, and having our officers potentially putting their lives at risk trying to get this guy back where he should have been previously, and that if they really want to make a transformative change, they should rein in some of the stuff they've been doing for the past 5 years. I'll tell Stuart that.
We should leave that.
Just like that. I just say it.
Say that.
It bothers me because it's just.
I think, Gary, do you hear an echo here? That's funny, because we haven't talked, and that's exactly what I said earlier. Go ahead, Alex.
Well, I was just gonna be like again, but I agree completely. Where legislative priorities in the minds of some people are on impact fees that cities are charging of a couple $100, and yet you have, to me at least, the unwinding of the moral fabric and social fabric and the safety of the state of Utah that's going to heck in a handbasket. And every day you can read, and we only see what the news chooses to carry, but every day there's somebody that should not, the system is not working, and people are unsafe and they're feeling unsafe, and yet the legislative priorities are fixing impact fees, burdensome regulation, while Rome burns, we're fiddling. So that's and maybe we ought to change. I mean, we'll do what you tell us. Maybe we ought to change the agenda and do the niceties, and then try to make sure we have time. Because as you said, what will happen is we get drug out, and then pretty soon they'll say, "Well, we have to go."
Yep.
And so,
And they're pretty tight.
the most important issues they hear a voice on, particularly leadership, will not. But you have, and I say too much, but Gary hears it all the time, so he just shuts me, turning me off, which he should. But You have individual legislators who may have these ideas, but my view is, as Alex, is the responsibility of the leadership of those bodies is to be collegial and statesmanlike, and whether you're a female legislature leader or male, and cause there to be logic and leadership in that process to not go on, not accommodate all kinds of crazy, ridiculous ideas simply because a member of the body has proposed that. And that's one of the frustrating things for me is we have people who know better, should know better, that are good people, who are allowing some of these things that are happening now or as dysfunctional and detrimental to the state, in my opinion at least, as have happened in the last 20, 30 years in the state of Utah. And these are people who know better. So what is the leadership doing to bring some balance to that? Where's the leadership of it? If it's just, this is whatever this group wants, they're gonna get, that's not leadership. Especially at the cost of the residents. I've said it, I say too much, but they have to hear that. They don't listen to, they might listen to Gary, they don't listen to the staff, but I think if more elected officials would articulate that, if you believe it, they need to hear that from 200 cities across the state. I mean,
Will Chief Swanson be there? He usually is, right?
Yeah.
And Steve Garside's very much been leading kind of a charge with prosecutors throughout the state. We've had a meeting with the president, and we've had a meeting with Tom Ross, who's over CCJJ. Yeah, CCJJ. And pretty much from what we've heard so far is if you're proposing an increase in penalties, forget it. It's not going to happen in the state of Utah. But if you're looking at changes, for example, in social programs and how that works, how the preliminary stuff works, we're willing to entertain that. And there are some bills this session that will do. It won't do what they promised to originally, but it'll do some good. But anyway, and they built a prison that's essentially smaller than the one that they just came out of. So that tells you the direction that they're going.
Can I suggest that on just to the point that they leave early, because they do, can we put together our thank you instead of going over all of that? And then we do these introductions, and there's like 30 of us in there. And by the time we've all introduced ourselves and had a thank you, it's like half the meeting is over.
Yeah,
so we want to get to the meat, like here's your donut and here's your thank you with all the things we thank you for, but let's really talk about what we need to talk about while they're there.
Tell them thanks when they leave.
Just a suggestion.
So do a written thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
that we can hand.
I also
The
suggest,
mayor can, obviously, but we don't all need to, thank you so much for being here, you're so great, let's talk, let's really use
Get
this
down to
time
brass
wisely.
tacks.
Correct.
yeah, put
Near
somebody.
future.
Near future.
We need a waiter, so if they start talking the way we don't like it, we take away some of their food. Okay,
You're in charge of that.
I have no problem.
Those are good
But I
suggestions.
do believe, let's skip the crap and let's get to the point. If they don't like us, tough.
And I think
But,
that water, I mean, we talk so much about water, I just think it dominated the entire conversation last, and I think that's fine, but I felt like we didn't talk about, like, the taxes and the criminal justice stuff, I think, are stuff that they need to hear from us, because the water, I think we're okay with whatever they're doing on the water side, I think we're probably okay now, that we know we've got the secondary.
Well, the way we get around that is we just simply say, we'd like to hear your side, the update on what's going on with the Great Salt Lake, and then you've got this funding that's been allocated now from the state, or from the feds for the study, obviously, but realistically, where do you think this is going? And just give us a 5-minute overview.
That's what we do, put times on it.
Yeah. If we do that, then that'll figure us out on track.
Or that everybody feels like they have to speak to it.
Right.
Well, that's what
And that's where it gets sideways, and so we don't want to do that.
Maybe do I hear you saying, that should be presumptuous, that you'd like the focus out of the things that are talked about here is that the taxes, the land use, and the JRI are the 3 priorities? Is that?
Those are the biggest ones.
You So we ought to put those, if they are, and whatever priority you tell us of those 3 items, we're gonna put on the agenda. And after the gratuities and niceties, then just try to jump right into those, and if there's time left.
Yeah, I don't think we all have to speak on everything either, or even have anything
No.
to say. We've got our prosecutor over here.
Exactly. And that's,
Oh, it's right there, yeah, I see it. But here it is.
I'm sorry, but I don't even think we need introductions.
They know who we are.
I don't
We
know
got
if
it.
anybody knew
Oh,
that.
we'll work
know
through that fast,
everybody.
don't worry about it.
And if they don't know us, that's okay. I don't-
There's only one that's new.
Yeah.
Not to belabor, can I make a suggestion, contrary to what you said, Clint?
Sure.
What I think is, I think when Gary,
Yeah, he's probably tone deaf with Gary.
but I think they think, well, he's just representing the league's position.
That's true.
You know, and, cause you're so heavily involved in the league and talk to them all the time, I think they need to hear, the staff are not gonna have a lot of influence. They need to hear from their peers, the elected officials who are saying, this is a problem for us. They hear that from Gary all the time, but I think because they don't hear it from elected officials collectively across the state, they continue on doing what they're doing, because there's no cost, there's no pushback from their peers. You know, it's just staff talk, and that, I may be wrong in that, but,
Yeah, just tee it up and then we can.
Okay, we need to wrap this up because we've got 2 more items here and I want to make sure we stay on schedule.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, thank
You
you.
guys good with that? Okay. All right, let's go ahead and move on then to number 4, which is go over some of the proposed amendments to Title 18 land use, so, and 19. So Chad, you want to enlighten us there?
Yeah, I'm gonna wait for this to move up here. We'll maybe just talk a little bit about the background of these changes. The changes really come down to, occasionally we find a need to kind of go through and do a comprehensive and omnibus ordinance update because we found some things that over time just had gotten out of whack with each other. So this is an opportunity for us to do that. Predominantly, the issues that are in this change are issues that have been discussed many times before. Some of them are things that just became inconsistent because we changed other sections of code and found out that this other section of code is also impacted by that particular code change. So I'm going to just go through really quick, kind of major. There are other things I won't cover in this really brief discussion, but just a couple of things. I want to talk about really very quickly. Just as an example of some of the minor changes, we have some setback and corner lot setback, for example, clarifications. We in our code, we never really said what these various differences are on this table. This clarifies that on the first of these numbers is the interior lot, the second is the corner lot. That was confusing to some of our customers and to some of our staff of what those numbers meant, so we clarified that that's what the people that have been here for a long time knew it. People that had not been here for a long time, our customers didn't know. So that's a good example of one that is just a clarification. This is an example of one that these numbers don't apply and never have applied. We don't ever have structures facing each other on the same lot in a single family zone. You never have 2 single family homes on one lot in a single family zone. So those have never applied. We've never applied those numbers. So there's not any reason for them to be there. So we're taking those out. Again, that became confusing sometimes to some of our applicants. You look at that and say, well, that means I can have 2 or 3 single family homes on one single family lot. No, you can't. It's not allowed. So we're going to take that out to clarify that. Now, some of the more major items. This is one that we've discussed many times. We have tried to find out why this didn't get included in other ordinances, but this is the only of the uses that's auto-oriented that's included in our current list of conditional uses in our MU and MUTOD. So if you remember, MUTOD is our historic downtown. That's the area by the front runner station, expanding over across the tracks to our new Tanner Clinic in those areas. So it's our most urban, dense area. All of the other auto-oriented type uses are just not allowed in that zone. For some reason, car wash has made it through every single one of those changes unscathed, even though we've talked about taking that out many times. So I think it could be argued that we could just take those out because of the discussions, but just to be on the safe side to make sure it's in an ordinance, we're taking those out. We've had another thing that's maybe spurred this along in the car washes is we've had a lot of car washes approved lately. None have ever been applied for the mixed use, but just out of an abundance of caution, we don't think that's an appropriate use in our mixed use TOD zone. So that'll come out.
Just because it's auto-focused?
It's auto-focused, and they tend to not be the type of form that you have in a downtown. They tend to be pushed way back on a lot. There are these tunnel washes now, like your Quick Quack and others.
Yeah.
They're a great use. They're just not, the downtown's not the right place for them. This is classified as a major change, but it's just a clarification change on our accessory structures. We've never administered this we've always gone to the peak. And we've even though we have a midpoint there, there's another section of code that talks about that height being measured to the peak, so we're making those two consistent. And that's the way we've administered that for many, many years. So that's just, again, new staff. One of the great things they do is they point out inconsistencies in our code. This is one that we found. Now, a regular structure, that's not the case. We do measure the mid-peak on like a single-family home. This is adding some clarification to our ADA standards. We don't
Back
have.
to that peak.
Mhm.
This is just, a what-if scenario. So if somebody's building up like on the hill, and they're counting the peak of the center of the lot, like, let's say if it's an A-frame and it's from peak to the ground, but yet the sides could be down a lot farther than the 14 feet.
Yeah, so it doesn't change where you measure from on the
Typography
ground.
is what I'm getting at. How do you deal with that then?
Still dealing with that the same way. We've always measured from average adjacent grade. So that's still gonna be from that average adjacent grade. You take that perimeter of the building, you take the average of that grade, and that's where you measured up to that peak.
Okay.
So you get some credit for the lower parts, you get some credit for the upper parts, the average. So it doesn't change that at all.
Okay.
Again, we needed to have some clarification. We don't ever, in our code right now, give people a place to go to find out what those ADA parking spaces should look like and how they should be designed. It's been something we've needed for a long time, so we've added that reference there so they can go to and find that. And then this is one that, if there was one that was any kind of close to new that we haven't talked about before, it's this one. Pole signs or box panel signs in the MU and MUTOD zones. So this is something that we have for a long time. We have, from a policy standpoint, this has been our policy. And with MU and MUTOD zones, the way we administer those zones, we don't have a specific sign code, but we apply our commercial sign standards to those zones. As we've done that, though, in these areas, we have consistently told people, the idea is for this to be pedestrian-oriented type zones, that large pole signs are not consistent with that vision for the downtown. We've never had any pushback on that, but as we increase the amount of development that are occurring in these zones, we want to make sure that it's very clear that those are just not an allowed sign type in this zone. Like I said, no pushback. We've had a lot of people that have applied for signs. We've administered it this way. The rest of the commercial standards are fine in those zones. We will eventually have specific sign standards for the MU and MUTOD zones, addressing things like projecting signs from buildings, signs that overhang the sidewalk, those types of things in those downtown type environments. But we don't have that ordinance completed yet, so this is just a way to get that most important thing in our code so that it says that those are not allowed in that particular zone. Again, that's our downtown and our most urban environments type areas.
Box panel cabinet sign.
That's your classic, you got the tin frame around it, you can take a plastic panel and stick it in there, remove that out. It's kind of a dying sign type, but some people still
It's not a
put them
monument
up.
sign though.
No, this is,
This is above.
The Duratran, where it's backlit generally.
But I'm
It's
saying
usually
how high is
backlit.
off the ground?
so that's not addressing the height. It could be, a lot of times we'll see these put on a building even. That's just saying those types of signs are not allowed.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
These are aesthetic problems.
They are, yeah. Pole signs though, as far as that type of environment, you're trying to aim for those pedestrians. And so we see that most monument signs can address the automobile in those areas because they're a slower speed generally in those downtown areas. Not always, but that's generally applicable. But those monument signs, as you're walking by, a pedestrian can see them better. They're more at their level, so. Those are the big ones. There's all those other, there's a number of other standards in there. If you have questions about the other ones I didn't mention.
Yeah, there's some setbacks, change it on the back lots from 5 foot
10 feet to 5 feet?
Does the easement changes
The
to be
easement
consistent
changes?
with our recent changes that engineering made to our PUDs, yep.
Yeah. That's just in the PUDs?
It's the PUDs, yep, public utility and drainage easements.
So let me ask you
And,
then,
that's not in the zoning
right,
PUDs, that's in the public utility easement, that's what you're saying, right?
PUDs, yeah, the public utility and drainage easements.
It's not in a certain type of development,
okay.
just generally.
So like, for instance, we had Dave's Weaver Canal in here earlier. I mean, if it's an easement, like for them, I mean, they're gonna need more than 5 feet to get equipment through there.
Yeah.
Should there have to be a,
Those are specific utility type easement sizes, but for a general public utility and drainage easement, we're finding that the 10-foot standard we have creates a 20-foot. If you have backing lots, you have 20 feet, and we don't need a full 20 feet. We need 10 feet is what we're
okay,
looking
so
at.
5 and 5, okay, gotcha.
And
That
that's,
makes more sense now.
that change was already made in other sections of the code. This makes it consistent with those sections of code.
Right.
Alrighty. We
Okay.
good on that?
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, council, I'll look for a motion to go into a closed door meeting to discuss purchase, exchange, lease, real property, including forms of water rights or shares.
I move that we go into a closed meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Those that are
Okay. I'd like to welcome everyone out to our Layton City Council meeting this evening. It's January 5th. Our start time is 7:03. I appreciate your patience for a few minutes late here, but we needed a quick break in between meetings. So I want to welcome everybody to a brand new year. 1920 or 19. Look at me, yeah. That's a good series, though. No, 2023. So I'll call this meeting to order, and as customary, we usually have one of our council members conduct our prayer and pledge, and this month it is Mr. Birthday Boy himself, Clint Morris. So Clint, do you want to take over?
Yes. If you please rise with me, and we'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance, and afterwards we'll have a prayer.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we come before thee this evening as a city council and members of the staff of Layton City and residents of Layton, grateful for this opportunity to gather. We are grateful for the safety and the peace that we have to be able to meet. We ask that as we go through our agenda this evening, that thou would give us wisdom, help us to make good decisions for the citizens of Layton City. We're grateful for all who serve here, for our public works employees, for our public safety employees, and all who make our city a great place to live. We ask finally that thou would please be with us and help us to be civil through our discussions this evening. And these things we ask for and do in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. I do want to excuse Council Member Tyson Roberts. He is on business and has asked for an official excuse. So I've recognized that. Okay, Council, we have several sets of minutes here that we need to approve. So I'll look for do any of you have any changes or corrections? If not, then I will look for a motion to approve the minutes. And if you could just go ahead and read them for the record.
I move that we approve the minutes of Layton City Council work meeting, September 1st, 2022. Layton City Council work meeting, September 15th, 2022. Work meeting, October 6th, 2022. Council meeting, October 6th, 2022. Work meeting, December 15th, 2022. And council meeting, December 15th, 2022.
I'll second.
It's been moved and second that we adopt the minutes as written. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move on to our municipal announcements at this time. And I believe Councilman Bloxham's going to fill in.
Yeah, filling in for Councilmember Roberts. There's a family skate night down in Bountiful on Thursday the 12th from 6 to 8. Admission is free and the skate rentals are $1 for Layton residents. So again, that's the 12th of January from 6 to 8.
Yeah, it's a fun event. A lot of people look forward to that. It's a good time to be on the ice. Okay. Does anyone else have any announcements? Nope. Okay. Then we'll go ahead and move on to a verbal petition that we have here. And we're going to start out first with Weber State with their Louder and Prouder. So I recognize President Mortensen, so.
Let's see here, let me get to the right. Okay, good evening, Mayor Petro, council members. It's always a pleasure to be with you and come and share an update about Weber State University as part of our Louder and Prouder tour. One of the things I'm committed to do as president is to make sure that all of our surrounding communities and great supporters we have know what's happening and have a chance to meet our outstanding students who happen to be from your community. And there's two with us this evening that I'll introduce in just a moment. But when I was here last March, I think I mentioned, but it bears mentioning again, that Weber State University from my humble point of view, is truly a very important institution in our community, in our state, and in our country. There was a study done by Georgetown University that was released last February that measured the return on investment for 4,500 institutions across the country. Unfortunately, the headline from that study was 30% of those institutions don't provide a return on investment for their students and graduates because of their cost or low completion rates or failure to align their programs with workforce needs. But if you dig into the details of that study, you can see that Weber State University is the only institution in the state of Utah, save for one small computer science private college in Salt Lake City, the only institution in the state of Utah that ranks in the top 10% in the country for return on investments for their graduates, whether they're 10 years out of school or 40 years out of school. So we're very proud of that recognition and feel like that's what higher education is supposed to do, and supposed to provide that benefit for our students and our communities. And that's one of my aims, is to keep that up. And so we're really excited about that. And I know a number of you are alumni and benefit from that as well, and help contribute to that. So I appreciate you representing Purple tonight and always. So we're very proud of that recognition. And if there's one thing I can do during my time as president, it's to try to keep that level of success happening there for the university. There's a lot of other exciting things happening, and I will keep it brief, but one thing you might not be aware of is this week, our new physician's assistant program started. We have 20 students in our initial cohort that was just fully accredited this past fall. And that's a program that our leadership in the College of Health Professions has fought long and hard to bring to life in order to help meet some of the critical healthcare needs we have in northern Utah. And so we're very excited to have a number of students who did their undergraduate work at Weber State now have the opportunity to pursue that program. And hopefully that will grow and be very successful in the future, along with our other programs in health professions, along with the programs that are doing very well in engineering and computer science, and also those in education and business and the social behavioral sciences. Our Masters of Social Work program is really growing and expanding and trying to meet critical needs in the social work field in our community, as well as many others. But with that, I'll at this point introduce the two students who are here this evening with me. They are members of our Student Presidential Leadership Fellows group this year, which means they were nominated by faculty or staff from across campus, not only for their outstanding academic achievement, but for their larger involvement in the university as a whole, and their representation of really being an engaged, involved student in the university. And I didn't coordinate with them on which one wants to go first. So, okay. So we have, and both of them are also Layton residents. So Lydia Muster is with us this evening, and then Maren Dawson also. And we'll give you a chance to hear from both of them, and then I'll be happy to respond to any other questions you might have for me about the university in general this evening. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lydia Muster. I've lived in Layton since I was 8 years old. I actually used to work at the Kenley Amphitheater. I know I recognize you, Dave. But I absolutely have loved my time at Weber State. I believe that Weber is absolutely incredible at helping people reach their potential. I am currently a supply chain management major, which is very timely right now.
That's good.
And I am super passionate about ethical supply chain management and sustainability, and I'm hoping to be able to make a huge impact with my major. But my Weber story actually starts when I was in junior high. My mom, as a single parent with 3 children, realized that she needed to finish her college education in order to support our family. She chose to go to Weber State. And before attending Weber State, she believed that she was not very academically gifted. But because of the support and encouragement she received while at Weber, she graduated with a top GPA, and she spoke at her own graduation. She really inspired me to attend New Ames and try to reach my own potential. So I attended New Ames North, which is the early college program that Weber State partners with an emphasis on STEM. They have a campus here in Layton at the Davis campus, and then they also have a campus in Ogden on the main campus. During my time at Weber, or just during the early college program, it was just absolutely incredible. I feel like I just really got my money's worth because I was able to actually graduate with my associate's degree at 17 before I had even gotten my diploma, which was an incredible opportunity. I also received just a STEM-focused education, and the support from Weber just was incredible. And so I knew that I absolutely had to stay at Weber State for my bachelor's degree, and that's when I started my bachelor's about a year ago, and it's seriously been incredible. All the professors I had last semester had real-world experience, either in industry or through contracting, and they never spared the opportunity to share that information with us. And additionally, through the career services and the mentorship programs through Weber State, I was able to navigate getting a paid internship, navigate my, negotiate my own salary, and I actually am now working part-time where I started my internship. And so regardless of your age, your background, I really believe that Weber State has just been incredible at helping people in this community reach their full potential. Thank you.
Wow, that was very well stated.
Learn it at the after.
Good afternoon, or good evening, I guess. My name is Maren Dawson. I'm a pre-med student at Weber State studying chemistry, and I'll graduate this spring, so we're excited about that. My Weber State story started, my grandparents actually went to Weber State, and then my parents did. And so when growing up in Layton, graduated from Northridge, and it came time to go to college, Weber State was an obvious choice. The CE program at Northridge really provided a lot of opportunities to get a good background into college. So I got a lot of CE credits there, went to Weber, where I was able to start a hosted chapter there and get involved in a lot of the clubs, pre-healthcare, AMSA, NSLS, PLF, lots of different things. Student government's been a highlight. But if there's one aspect of my Weber career that's been really fundamental for my future, it's undergraduate research. One thing that I think makes Weber different from other universities is you're not a number, you're not a cog in a machine. Professors are there to help you succeed. They want you to succeed. And so I'll give an example with that with my research. I was interested in going into undergraduate research, and so I was talking to different professors, and my inorganic chemistry professor got me interested in it, and so I talked to him about it. And his question was, like, he didn't come to me and say, oh, you're going to do ABC, you're going to do this and that. He said, what do you want to do? What are you interested in? And I presented what I want to do, and he made sure that I got the resources that I needed to get where I wanted to go. And if there's anything about Weber, it's that they are willing to go out of their way, staff at all levels in the university, to make sure that you go where you want to go and not where they want you to go or where they want you to be in their university. So Weber's been a wonderful experience. It's been awesome, and it's been a really good time, and I'm excited to be a graduate. So thanks.
Thank you. We're proud of you, Layton resident as well, both of you.
Yes, Lydia and Maren are both excellent examples of all that Weber State students are doing, Weber State students from Layton are doing and can do. And I think under what their plans are and their ambition and abilities are what we're trying to do in terms of contributing back to the community is in very good hands in the future. So happy to respond to any questions you might have for me or let you get on with the rest of your business and agenda this evening. But please know we're always willing to support the efforts that you have, that you're trying to undertake as a council in any way that we can, and want to be good partners back like you are to us. So thank you.
Well, President, I know that I've had the opportunity to sit on several boards with you, and I have to personally say thank you. I know you're a huge champion, not only for this area, but for the entire state, and you've been able to really, I think, move the needle forward when it comes to education, and not only that, the collaboration with other schools and being able to fulfill a lot of the needs right here within our workforce, and I appreciate that, and just want to express that. And we all have a Weber State story, but these are interesting. So thank you very much.
Yep.
Anyone else want to say anything? Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Again, thank you very much. Okay, we do have one more verbal presentation to make tonight, and this one's a very, I gotta say, probably a first. I don't know that we've ever had anybody that has served the city for as long as they had in a volunteer way, and I'm going to tonight acknowledge Mr. Richard Allen for many, many years of service. Just to kind of give you a little bit of background, he's served on our mosquito abatement district since 1977. So you're talking over 45 years. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of history here, and then I'm actually going to I'll allow him to sit right now because I know that he's made a special presentation here tonight, just out of the hospital today. So I want you to just rest for a minute while I kind of express everything that he's done for this city. So not only serving on the Mosquito Abatement Board, Mr. Allen's also, back in 81, he sat on our Board of Adjustments here at the city for 15 years, and he actually chaired that 4 different times. He's also been a part of our city planning and our master planning committees. In 2000, he was part of the Old Downtown Board to kind of help preserve that and to acknowledge, some of the historical buildings we have there. In 07, he ran for city council. In 08, he was the chairman of the Tea Party. In 14, he was his neighborhood watch captain, I imagine, right? And then he served in the U.S. Air Force from 1953 to 1993. You served in Newtown, is that correct? In 65 and through 82. You're part of the civil service from 1965 to 1990. He's been a bishop in 84 to 89. And like I've said, he's served on this particular board for over 45 years. And I know we've had a lot of staff members that have served our city for a long time, but I don't know of anybody that had served this long. So with that, I'm going to ask Mr. Allen, if he could, you want to come up to the podium here, and then I'm going to read this certificate for you.
He doesn't hear very well, so you have to really speak loud.
Okay.
My hearing aids are really bad.
Okay, well, I will be loud then. I'm going to present this certificate of appreciation, which we hereby express our sincere appreciation to Richard Allen for 45 years of dedicated service, outstanding performance, and lasting contributions to the Mosquito Abatement District and the Davis Board. But more importantly, an exemplary resident for our city. You have served us well. You've been on many, many boards and has helped us so much, but I guess here, I just want to say thank you very much. We appreciate that. And thank you for Thank you again. Okay, that concludes our verbal petitions at this time. So now we'll go ahead and move on to our citizens' comments. And this is a portion of our meeting where we do like to hear from our citizens. And certainly if you're representing a larger group, then, I will allow additional time for you to speak on that. Typically, we like to limit the time to about 3 minutes. And certainly if somebody's already mentioned a topic, then if you could, just don't elaborate on it, but just say you agree with it and then go ahead and present any additional information. And the other thing I'd like to point out is that even though the council might not comment back, should any of you have a concern you want to bring to us, just know that we are truly listening and that we will take all of this into consideration, and we'll work closely with the staff to see what we can do. As you come up to the mic, please state your name and address for the record. And in some cases, we may ask privately for your phone numbers. And I'll make it known now. If you want to just give it to probably our legal counsel here on the end, then he'll make sure it gets to the right body so that we can get back to you. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to our citizens.
Hi, I'm Rochelle Woodbury. I live at 796 North, 3625 West in Layton. And I know some of you have heard from me before about the pool, but I'm bringing the names on the petition that has been signed over the past month. We're at about 691 names. I just printed out the names that live in Layton and Kaysville because they're the ones that use the pool the most. Other people have signed it as well that live in Ogden and some of the surrounding areas that also use the pool, but I know that may not be as applicable to this meeting, so I'm going to give those to the court recorder. And then they asked me to read their comments because several of them made comments, and I feel like you've heard enough from me. So I'm only going to read a few, but I'll just start with the older ones. So this is from Noah Arnell. He says, we had a gas leak at our meet yesterday. This is from a youth swimmer and had to end early. We really need a pool that we can rely on and won't break every week. He also says we need new starting blocks. Elsie Smith says, we would like to have a pool that we can share with the other swimmers and have enough lane space for all of us. Chad Pendleton says we went through years of swimming in a facility not built for it. Jeff Johnson says it is time to have better recreation resources for Layton citizens. Camille Chris just says, I agree. Natalie Arnold says it's time to update the pool. I know surf and swim is fun, but I would like other options. Kathleen Lamborn says it's time for Layton to have a new pool that isn't always broken, that has decent blocks and doesn't scare newcomers. Joel Noak says, I feel it's time for a new pool. Surf and swim is outdated and needs to be replaced. Don Lewis says Layton City needs a 21st century pool and rec facility. The city is losing out on fantastic community aquatic programs opportunities. Sorry, the current pool facility is long outdated and overdue for replacement. I was actually impressed. Most of these people were very civil, like there weren't any mean comments. Nancy Sylvester says, we go swimming elsewhere most of the time, and I have kids who are coming up on high school competition age. A new pool would be a huge benefit to the community and our youth. Sarah Rivkin says, my kids use this pool for club swim and it's closed often for broken parts. The small pool is very outdated and needs to be renovated. Kristen Whitlock says, I worry about the safety of our children at this pool. In the past 2 weeks, they've closed the pool because of a gas leak and a water line break. The pool is too shallow for it to be used for local swim teams. A new pool is long overdue. Caitlin Shaw says Layton City needs more than a pool. I don't want to muddy the waters. She says they need a city rec center and a new facility for swimming. Daniel Wilder says, as a former high school and competitive swimmer, a father to 2 high school and competitive swimmers, the need and benefit for a full-size competitive aquatic center brings many new opportunities to both grow the community and local businesses. Competitions bring outside business ventures who are more likely to service the needs created with this type of facility. I hope to see a ribbon cutting in the near future. Riley Thompson says it's time for a new pool. Tisha Rothduch says, I want my voice to be heard. We need this badly. Adlin Groberg, also a high school swimmer, says Layton desperately needs a new pool. It is old and doesn't satisfy the needs of competitive swimmers or normal swimmers. Please help us get a new one. Morgan Davis says, I live nearby and would love to see an improved facility. Briley Weaver says, I used to swim on the high school and club team and know how important this is to kids and teams around the area. We don't have enough of them. I would like to see more kids involved in the sport so kids can get the same experience and lessons out of it than I did. Angie Merrill says, I live in Layton. My son has worked as a lifeguard there for 2 years. There isn't a month that goes by that they must close early due to mechanical breakdowns. Rusty King says, competing at Surf and Swim always makes me add time. It's a terrible experience and dangerous driving into the shallow lane. That was a little negative. Emma Warden says, I worked at Layton Surf and Swim for 3.5 years and just recently quit. That place is falling apart and we did our best to fix it, but it wouldn't always work. Amber Williams says, this is important. So I'll leave it there with one comment. Nicole Udi, who is the coach for Layton and is there at the pool every day. She also coaches the club team, the Surfers, just sent me a quick statement. She says, as a coach for Layton High and the Surfers, my list of concerns is long. Quite frequently, the pool is closed due to mechanical malfunctions, chemical levels being unsafe, gas leaks, bubble heater going out, pool heater going out, the list goes on and on. Layton is the biggest city in the county. We need a new facility that will accommodate our residents and other patrons alike. Yes, pools are expensive, but the impact it will have on our community from the programs it will generate will help outweigh the cost by investing in our community and youth programs. I hope the city and city council will understand that this is a need, not just a want by its citizens. And she also wanted me to say that the chemicals are off. One of the girls broke out in hives yesterday after practice, and kids have been getting out of the pool with red stinging eyes. So the last thing I wanted to say is I obviously am very passionate about this. We have started a group. Paul Fezer, I know some of you have talked to him about this issue, has started a website that's a community push for a new pool that's actually gaining quite a bit of momentum. So we're excited about that. I'll share that with you through email. But I also wanted to invite you to the meet. There's a high school meet with all of the local high schools. So it's kind of a unique opportunity. It has Northridge, Davis, and Layton competing on Thursday. In the afternoon, it starts at 3 p.m. And I don't know how many of you have been to the pool lately or have been there during a swim meet, but it's kind of impactful to watch the kids trying to dive off the side and to see them trying to maneuver around this area with how many swimmers there are and how many swimmers, when you see them warming up in the water in this smaller pool, you'll see really kind of what a need we have in this facility. So I just wanted to urge you to please consider this again, and I'll drop off the petition, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you consolidating all those comments as well, so that's very beneficial. Okay, is there anyone else? Okay, well, I'll go ahead and move our meeting along then and go down to our consent items. We have two here this evening, and again, this is kind of a situation where we can actually take action on both items in one single motion. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and deal with the first one, which is the appointment of Tyson Roberts to the board of the Mosquito Abatement District for Davis. So in other words, we're looking at replacing Mr. Allen that has served on that board for the past 45 years and bring it back to an elected official to be able to sit on that board. So I've presented that. So council, I'd look for anybody to make a motion to accept that.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve Resolution 2307, appointing Tyson Roberts to the Board of Directors for the Mosquito Abatement District, Davis.
Okay, thank you. I know Tyson will do a good job. He has a pretty good background in chemicals and that, and I think he'll service us all well. So with that, I've got a motion. I need a second.
Okay, a second.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, well, I'm going to go on to item number B, which is a bid award. And I know Mr. Terry Colburn's going to present this for us, which it's regarding our secondary water metering. So, Terry, I'll let you present Resolution 23-05.
Thank you, Mayor. Bring before the council Resolution 2305, a bid award for the secondary water metering project to Leon Paulson Construction. Resolution 2305 authorizes the execution of an agreement between Layton City and Leon Paulson Construction for the secondary water metering project. The project includes the installation of 2,380 secondary water meter enclosures, boxes, required piping and fittings, and site restoration on existing secondary water connections located in both front and backyards to provide for a fully functioning system. The city will purchase, furnish, and install secondary water meters separately. 2 bids were received, with Leon Paulson Construction submitting the lowest responsible bid in the amount of $5,089,725. The engineer's estimate was $5,185,000. Staff would recommend the council adopt Resolution 2305.
Okay. Council, do you have questions regarding this? I know we had a discussion earlier, but we really didn't get into our own metering here for the city. So does anyone have any questions on that?
Maybe just a question. Yeah, thanks, Terry. Last time, before the new year, we were mentioning there was an additional tranche of funding that was potentially coming for this. Do you have a status for where we're at on that? And
We don't qualify, as I understand it, right, Steve? We've maxed out.
Well, that's a good
We
thing.
beat everybody to the punch.
That's
I didn't
okay,
want to
maxing
say
it
that
out.
in front of Rick, but he was a little slow.
Terry, I've got a question. Do you want to speak to the type of meter? I know that you guys have mentioned that we're putting in the same meter that we have already within the city.
We're putting in the same brand of meter. We're not putting in the same type of meter. A secondary meter. I won't bore you, but residential meters and other meters on apartments and whatnot can pick up low flow, like flushing a toilet, where a secondary meter doesn't care about that. It's just the mass water that goes through it. Okay. But we didn't want to run two different software programs. So we have a very good relationship with the brand that we already have and are dealing with. I can't give you, I won't give you right now the price. I can give you the price of ours in a meeting, work meeting, but I won't expose the competitors' prices. But what I can tell you is we negotiated a price before the first of the year, before an increase came out. Brass, the cost of brass has gone up significantly, and not only is it the cost of it, but it's the availability of it too. You know, you're 6 months out just to get brass products related to not only water meters in a water meter system, but all the other parts in the meter box and on the main and whatnot that are brass fittings, you know. So, but the answer to your question, we're getting it from the same people, but it's a different meter.
Okay. I just want to ask this question, just because I'm a little bit familiar with some of the metering, or the meters, and I know, like you said, they measure the volume, and I know that the new technology out is basically, I mean, there's no moving parts in it or no probe in the center. Are we getting those versus the one in the probe, knowing that this is for secondary? Because I know that those old probe styles cause havoc.
It's the latter that you talked about that the secondary will be using.
The latter meaning what?
The full flow.
The full
volume,
flow. No. Okay. Very good. I'm excited about that. That's good to hear. Okay.
Just one more, Mayor, if I may. Just as a benefit to the residents, the state legislature required us as cities to put secondary metering on every single secondary connection that we have. They helped us out with some of the funding, but when you have the entire state forced into a market and there's only a certain number of people who build these secondary meters, you can imagine what the pricing can do. And when we are a public body, we want to make sure we're using the taxpayer money as best we can. So I want to highlight and say thank you, Terry, to you and your team for doing that negotiation early and making sure that the money that we have in the city is being well spent. So thank you.
You're welcome.
I agree with that. That's very good.
We have a very good relationship with, both companies. I was on the phone today with Steve Polson. Steve is the president of Leon Polson Construction Company. Now he's a son. He was actually a worker, the superintendent out in the field in 1974 when I first started. His dad is Leon Polson, was the mayor of Riverdale, and then turned the company over to Steve, and I called him to have a chat with him about this project, and we're very fortunate to be working with them because they're people that we have a good relationship. We also have a very good relationship with the supplier of the meters. some of the other brand of meters won't have enough in stock even in a year to finish, like if Weber Basin and some of the other cities got together, those projects. We've secured to make sure that we have the meters to be installed as we go along. What they will have to do is put in a jumper until they get the meters, okay? So in other words, they're putting in a pipe in the meter box that's not a meter, that the water flows through, that doesn't register anything, but keeps the customers happy because they're wanting the water when it's time, spring, summer, to water. Whereas we've arranged to have enough, what did you say, Steve? How many are we requiring, Leon, to put 800 a year that we're requiring them to put in at least 800 digging up and putting in the boxes and whatnot, and then we'll have the meters to go in right away to register and start getting the information or billing or whatever we need for that, so.
That brings up one quick question. I don't mean to belabor this, but I know some of these are going to be installed in the backyards and that. So
Some of what?
Some of these meters will have to be in the backyards, right? With some.
No.
Or are you going to put them all
are in the backyards.
Yes,
the
okay.
difference.
That's a good point. They are.
We won't put anything in the backyard unless we have to. Going out west and whatnot, some are already in, and the ones they'll do in the front. The ones that are in the backyard are the ones that used to be in old East Layton City, and they put them in backyards, side yards, every kind of yard.
I used to have one of those. I'm
Neighbor's
familiar.
So, but no, we won't put them in the backyards unless we absolutely have to.
Okay, very good.
One question, Mayor.
Sure.
Starting time, and when do you think you might be finished?
We have a finish date of 2026, start as soon as we can have the pre-con and get going.
Okay.
They're ready to roll. I talked to Steve today. They're happy and ready to get after it.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
We'll go ahead and bring this then back to the council to make a motion regarding the consent items. So who would like to? Yeah. We've already done the first one, but we've got the second one.
I make a motion, Madam Mayor, that we approve the secondary water metering project 2222 of Leon Construction with resolution 2305.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second that we adopt the water metering project. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. We're moving right along here. We're now moving down to our public hearing tonight. And Mr. Chad Wilkinson's going to enlighten us on this project. It has to do with several different amendments. So, Chad?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This is what we describe as an omnibus text amendment. This is an amendment to the text of our zoning ordinance, and it covers a lot. That's why we call it the omnibus. You don't like omnibus? I like the word, for the record. I like the way it sounds when it comes off my lips.
That's an actor for you. No.
So
Go ahead.
this covers a lot of territory. I'm not going to go into the detail of the entire ordinance, but just to give some typical types of changes that we're looking at. These are changes that over time we get inconsistencies or things that are not clear in our code. So it's an attempt to try to clarify some of those. The first one on this list is a good example of that. We've just recently adopted some differences to our easement sizes, gone from 10 feet to 5 feet. we had sections of the code that didn't comply with that. So we've clarified that. We've brought those into consistency. Another one down here, you can see we had some new staff that pointed out that although we had existing staff that knew exactly what these two numbers referred to, there were new staff and also customers, citizens that didn't understand what those meant. So we clarified and put in interior lot and corner lot. That means that one of those numbers, the first number applies to an interior lot, the second to a corner lot. So very important distinction if someone's designing a home or other things. Again, those of us that have been here for a while understood that. We had some new staff that pointed out that that wasn't as clear as it could be, so we've clarified that. Another one that's, again, something that really didn't apply ever was this particular standard minimum between buildings on the same lot. These are primary structures on the same lot. So in a single family zone, you never have more than one primary structure on the same lot. Anything like a detached garage or a barn would be an accessory building, not considered a primary structure on a single family lot. So these standards simply didn't apply. We've never applied that number to any development. There was no reason to have there, as it sometimes created confusion to the citizens and others using this code. Another example of something that has been talked about many, many times, but for whatever reason never made it into an ordinance, in our downtown area, our mixed-use TOD area, that's transit-oriented development zone, that's our historic downtown. Several years ago, most of the auto-oriented uses, such as auto repair and other uses that are more focused on the automobile, were taken out of the code. Car washes were discussed at that time, but never made it into that particular ordinance change. So this clarifies and takes that officially out of that particular zoning category. I think for the most part, we talked about these in the work session. We've made some changes, just minor changes to the way we define where the accessory structure height is measured to. We've added some references to the accessible parking standards that are included in the building code. So that shows up there at the bottom. Those have not previously been included in our code, but this gives people the actual dimensions, someplace they can go to find out what the dimensions of an accessible parking standard is, and those various signage and other requirements for an ADA parking stall. And then just lastly, of the ones I'm going to go over, there's other changes in the code. We've clarified a longstanding policy that we've done, which is that pole signs and box panel signs are not allowed in those MU and MUTOD zones because they've got a different focus in that area. It's more of a pedestrian focus. There's a number of other changes. They're all related to, again, clarification. Some are clearly grammatical. One other, I think, kind of interesting example is that we no longer require hard copies. Everything's submitted digitally now. We had a reference in our code that said that we had to have 20 copies of plans, and that caused confusions to developers and others who would come in with 10 copies. They'd come in with 10 copies of their plans, and we'd say, well, we really don't take those anymore. That can cause some frustration for someone who hasn't talked to us before submitting. So we've taken that out. It simply refers to a site plan being submitted. So with that, I'm happy to answer any of your questions. The Planning Commission did review these changes, and they are recommending approval. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can.
Okay, Council, do you have any questions before we open up for a public hearing? If there's no questions, then I look for a motion to open the public hearing.
I move that we open the public hearing to discuss ordinance 23-02 for these proposed amendments.
Okay. Public hearing is now open, so anyone who wishes to speak regarding the amendment changes, you're welcome to come up again to step up to the podium. If you could, please state your name and address for the record. Okay, seeing that there's no public hearing at this, or no one wishing to make a comment on that, I'll go ahead and bring it back to the council for action. So I'd look for a motion to close the public hearing and take action regarding ordinance 23-02.
Madam Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing and that we approve ordinance 23-02, the proposed amendments to Title 18 and Title 19.
Okay, thank you very much.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, I'll go ahead and do a roll call vote on this. Councilman Bloxham?
Yes.
Councilman Morris?
Yes.
Councilman Smith Edmondson?
Yes.
Councilman Thomas?
Yes.
Okay, there you have it. It's unanimous. That brings us down to our last item on the agenda, which is unfinished business. Does anybody here have any unfinished business? I do have one small item that I'd want to acknowledge here. And that is, we do like to acknowledge our birthdays here within the council. And Councilman Morris had a birthday yesterday. And as tradition has it, we like to say, okay, what type of treat would you like? And it's getting interesting now. Tyson Roberts wanted beef jerky, and Mr. Morris would like his gummy bears.
Right. That's right.
So, with that, I do have, you get to choose your flavor there. And like the commercial goes, hopefully our voices won't change or revert back to our childhood. But we want to wish you a happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
You guys up for singing, or are you just going to go happy birthday? Okay.
Happy birthday, Clint.
Thanks, Dave.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you.
Okay, that's pretty much concludes our.
You betcha. I move that we adjourn.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate everyone who attended tonight, and including those online. So have a good